Alright, so this is going to be a video lesson guide for King. In this session, I actually kind of jumped a little bit back and forth between healing and sitting. So here we're just doing a little bit of healing, and you can hear that clicking sound. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk through basically the foundations of dog training that we're using in these sessions. So I've noticed with King in his sessions, he takes a few minutes to kind of settle into like a learning mentality. He comes out a little bit distracted, he comes out a little bit wild, which is fine. I like that he's coming out with a lot of enthusiasm and energy, but we really want to just teach him to focus in on the task. And that is going to happen more as he understands what's really expected of him over time. So that clicking noise that you hear is what we call a clicker, and what it means is that he is doing the behavior that we want. So in this particular moment of the training session, we want him walking on my left hand side with his head and shoulder essentially next to my hip. And like I said, we're switching a little bit back and forth here between heel and sit. And essentially sit is going to be part of heel. So if we do ask for him to heel with us, that essentially just means be on our left side. And so we're using the clicker to tell him that he's done that. And the way he understands that the clicker means that he's done the right thing is that the clicker is always followed by a treat. So by doing this, we can really isolate the exact moment he's doing the right thing. So when he is politely walking at our side and paying attention, we can really capture that moment with that clicker, and then we reward him following that clicker. So he knows that the clicker means that he's going to get food for doing something correct. Now, when we integrate the sit, if you notice, we're not asking for a whole lot of behaviors, we're not giving a whole lot of commands, but the sit should be ultimately implied with the heel. So if he's walking politely at my side and we come to a halt, the expectation is he sits at my side. King has a bit of a tendency to sit either kind of far away, so either like a couple feet to my left, or behind, so a couple feet back. And unfortunately, that's kind of common with your really big dogs because the placement of where they're going to sit is most often dictated by the placement of their back feet when you come to a halt. And because he's such a big dog, those back feet are pretty far behind us when we come to a halt. And then he kind of just rocks back onto those back feet as he goes into that sit. So that's going to make him sit a little bit further back than we would necessarily like, but it's not that big of a deal. We're going to work on that quite a bit, so that's really what we're focusing on a lot in this session. There's a lot of different qualities to the sit in general that we're going to try and clean up. One is the position, so we want to make sure he's sitting in the correct position. That's probably going to be the biggest challenge for him. The other thing we're also going to work on is having him sit every time we come to a halt. Now, in a lot of these repetitions, he does sit very quickly, which is very nice, right? We want him to sit quickly. The challenge there is that we don't have a lot of time to kind of reposition where he's standing before he goes into that sit. So that just makes a little bit of a challenge for us as far as positioning goes, but the speed is very nice. There are a couple times when we do come to a halt and he doesn't quite sit right away. Sometimes when we're over here by this doorway, he gets a little bit distracted, and that gives us an opportunity to kind of teach him what happens if he doesn't sit. So you'll see when he comes to a halt right here, I'm applying some upward leash pressure, and I'm not using a lot of pressure. It's just gentle pressure to communicate that when he feels it, he's supposed to go into a seated position. When he does, that pressure turns off. Now, I clicked a little bit early there, but I knew he was about to go into that sit. But I want him to feel this leash pressure, and when he feels this directly straight up leash pressure, he should go straight into a down. But if you can see where his back feet are, he's going to rock back onto those back feet, which then kind of just puts him a little bit behind us, right? So for most dogs, I teach that leash pressure immediately when we first start teaching the sit. I think I tried to do this with him yesterday, but he has something that's very natural with dogs. It's called opposition reflex. And what opposition reflex is when he feels tension on the leash, he wants to go the opposite direction. This is honestly the reason why most dogs pull at the end of the leash when you go for a walk, because you're pulling backwards and they're going to want to pull forward. But what that means is that whenever I apply that leash pressure, he has a very high level of this opposition reflex, and so he tends to pull even further away, meaning further to my side, further back, which only kind of makes that positioning a little bit more of a challenge. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a lot of repetitions as much as we can without the leash pressure to show him that when he does sit in the right place, he gets rewarded. What we're also doing is if he sits in the wrong position and he sits way too far out of position, then we just don't reward him. Now, there are a few times where he will sit pretty far out of position, but he's done something else that's important for him to learn. So when we apply that leash pressure and he does go into the seated position, then we will reward him because he's learning in that moment that doing the behavior gets him, one, the pressure turns off and he gets a reward. For some dogs, pressure can be a little bit stressful, so we do want to make sure we reward after that moment. He doesn't have too much issue with leash pressure. He's a very strong, powerful, dominant dog, and he seems pretty comfortable with pressure on the leash. So much so that sometimes he'll sit here with the leash pressure on and not really be bothered by it. But in that moment, like you saw there, when he's just standing at my side and he feels that leash pressure and he's still not going into that sit, it actually provides me the opportunity to help him into a better position so that when he does go into the sit, he's sitting in the best position I can get. So when we're just walking around, I'm again just clicking and rewarding on my side. I want him to get lots and lots of rewards for walking politely on our left-hand side. The more he gets rewarded for doing that, the more frequently he's going to do it. If you notice there, he sat really far behind me, so I just did not reward that. I started to notice at this point in the session he was starting to get a little bit tired. So we're going to do a little bit of healing, try to get some more pep in his step, try to get him a little bit more enthusiastic. And again, I just want to frequently reward him in that position. I like to do things like about turns and sudden turns, lefts, rights, about turns, figure eights, speeding up, slowing down, sudden stops, and requesting him to sit. So that he is encouraged to really pay attention because he essentially thinks, oh my god, this lady's crazy, she has no idea where she's going. But again, I just want to continuously click and reward in this heel position. As we get more and more repetition and more consistency with him in this heel position, ideally what we want to eventually get is him understanding the heel command means to go to this heel position, which is exactly where he is now. The way we do that is right now we're just click and feed while he's in that position, while he's paying attention, while he's doing all the right things. If you notice, he's not really needing a whole lot of encouragement to stay at my side when we're moving around. So what we will start to do is in that pattern of click and feed, we start to say the word heel, which is going to be our heel command, immediately before we click. So when he's already in that position, when he's paying attention, when he looks really good, then we're going to say the word heel, immediately click, and immediately feed. And we're going to do that repetitively as well. So it'll become heel, click, feed, heel, click, feed, heel, click, feed, heel, click, feed. What ends up happening is he figures out this pattern. When he hears the word heel, he gets a reward in that heel position. Right. So here he got a little bit of a correction because he was trying to eat food off the ground. And we're using a slip leash, so I really didn't hurt his feelings. But we want to start to introduce those types of things now because he's a very headstrong dog, and so those corrections are going to be a very important part of his consistency moving forward. But back to what I was saying, when we start to introduce the heel command, we say heel, we immediately click and reward in that heel position at my hip. And if you notice, if he does kind of lag behind me, I don't reach back to him. I keep my hand forward and make him come forward to my hand. So I don't reach back to reward him if he's getting too far behind me. I make him draw forward. I use my hand out ahead of me to do that as well. And so what's going to end up happening is he's going to learn that when he hears the word heel, he's going to expect a reward at my hip. That way, when he hears that word heel, he's going to ideally go to where he's going to expect that reward. This is a concept we use in every different behavior that we teach the dogs. So when we teach the place command, we teach them that when we say the word place, you should expect that reward on that place bed. When we give the kennel command, he should expect that reward inside the kennel. Now, eventually, these will become non-optional behaviors, meaning you do it and you get a reward, or you choose not to do it, you'll get a correction, and then you'll still have to do it anyways, but you won't get a reward. But that will come later on in the process once we are confident that he really enjoys the behavior, he really likes doing it, he's very consistent at doing it, he's doing it kind of automatically. We don't need to do a lot of encouragement. And here you can see I'm adding in that heel command.
No. Heel. Sit.
So the important thing to remember about when we introduce commands is that when we're teaching the dog about the command, what the command means, and everything associated with doing the behavior when it is asked for, i.e. when we give the command, is we give the command when we are very confident, I would say at least 90% confident the dog is going to do the behavior correctly. So if I don't feel confident the dog is going to do the behavior correctly, like I know that we're about to walk past a high level distraction, or if the dog is really tired or anything like that, then I might not give a command. I might just encourage the dog to do the behavior. So here I'm giving him a big reward with some love and affection because he gave me a very nice small adjustment into a better sit position.
Sit.
And that's something that's kind of challenging. So when he sits out of position and then he fixes himself with a minor adjustment, that's actually a pretty challenging behavior, and he did very well with it. So I want to make it a big deal so he can try to do it again in the future. So what I start to do here is when he does give me a good position, I'm going to encourage him and reward him with praise and affection. So that way I can kind of keep him motivated. This has been a pretty long session. I tend to find that when the dogs start to get a little tired, a sudden praise and affection party type reward can re-energize them and get them ready to do behaviors with more enthusiasm and a better attitude. Again, even when we're doing that, we're not going to allow him to practice any unacceptable behaviors. We're not going to let him mouth on us. We're not going to let him bite on us, jump on us, anything like that. But if you notice here, now he's a little bit more enthusiastic. He's trying to keep up with me. I'm making it a little bit more challenging to get him to work a little harder to stay in position. And I'm using the leash throughout the session. If he tries to eat food off the floor, I use that leash to stop him from eating off the floor. But again, we're trying to keep it exciting, trying to keep things moving. If I keep him focused on the task at hand, he's much less likely to try and eat stuff off the floor, look outside, see what's going on out there. I want him to stay focused on me and what we're doing.
Sit. Free.
You'll notice that the word I am using quite a bit is the word free. So the word free we introduce in this early stage, even though we haven't given him a command, so we haven't told him to sit, but ideally we don't want him to get up out of that sit until we say the word free. What this does, the word free just means you are allowed to do whatever you want within the limits of the leash, and as long as it's not an unacceptable behavior. So once I tell you free, you can get up, you can move out of that position, but you still can't, go past the end of the leash. You can't bite on me, you can't jump on me, you can't do any of those unacceptable behaviors. I'm still not going to let you eat off the ground. But we introduce it now before we start to say a command, because once we give a command, that command is until told otherwise. And what that means is if I say sit, you stay seated until I tell you otherwise. So if you're in a sit, you stay seated even if I move away from you. But if I ask you to heel or recall or tell you free, then you're allowed to get up. Now, we also use a couple other types of markers. So when you hear that click, the click means ideally you should stay in behavior. You're going to get a piece of food, but stay in that behavior while you enjoy that piece of food. If you hear multiple clicks, that's going to tell him you can get up out of the position and come get your reward. So if my dog is on the other side of the room and I tell him to sit and he does, and I give him a double click, he can get up out of that sit and come to me for his reward. So we use the double click if we're going to pet and praise in a really exciting manner where he might get up. Yeah, so like there, I'm going to let him get up out of the position and love on him and tell him what a good boy he is, get him all riled up so that we can go back into training. Now, I love using the clicker because our dogs probably are used to hearing our voices all the time, and so we're always blathering on at them. And so sometimes trying to use verbal markers like the word good or yes can get lost in the mix. So that clicker is a very novel sound, and it's able to break through noisy environments. So I'm a big fan of using the clicker. However, he is also going to be conditioned to our verbal markers. So like I said, if you hear that single click, it means he's doing the right thing, he's going to get rewarded, and he should stay in behavior. Another marker we can use for this is going to be the word good. So in place of a single click, you could use the word good instead. So if you forget your clicker one day, you can still use that word good, and it means the exact same thing. Now for the double click, which means you can stop doing the behavior and come get your reward or go get your reward wherever it is. In place of double click, you can use the word yes. So these are going to be the important markers we're going to use as far as reward markers, meaning my dog's doing good stuff and I like those things. If our dog does something they're not supposed to do, the marker we're going to use is going to be the word no, and you've heard him get that a couple times here, but not a whole lot. No means that there is some type of negative consequence coming. That could be a leash correction, and then once we start using the e-collar, it'll become an e-collar correction, one or the other or both. And it depends. We'll talk more about what we will use when we get there.
Yes.
Here, when I say double click, you can. It's usually 2 or more clicks. Sometimes I do like 17. I get really clicker happy, so I find that the dogs really enjoy it, so it's fine. Now, anytime he gets distracted, again, if I haven't told him the heal command, he's not technically in heal, but I do want him to stay engaged with me. So that's where I start making some bubbly, goofy noises. In the very first day of training, this is essentially what we did. You know, he came out here. We assumed he knew absolutely nothing. I just wanted him to engage with me, but I'm not going to give him commands, call his name, do anything weird like that. But when I want to get his attention, and I'm not sure if he's going to do it on his own or respond to a command, meaning at this stage I don't think he knows the commands well enough to respond to them the first time I ask for them, then I'm just going to make a bunch of goofy noises. So you hear me make like a little cooing sound, little like goofy noises, kissy noises, stuff like that. That's just when I'm trying to get his attention so he can focus on me and not on whatever's going on outside. And it's just to get him focused on me so we can get back to whatever activity it was we were doing. In the future, we will not be relying on those kissy noises. We'll be asking for obedience. It will be non-optional. He has a choice to either do it on his own or he will be corrected for failure to do it. But that is only after we are confident he likes doing the behavior, fully understands what's expected of him, and understands the consequences for doing it or not doing it.
Sit.
I can tell he's getting pretty tired, so we're going to wrap this up. And I hope this has been helpful.